Now, this topic today on the infinite Christ is actually a delightful one, and one that should hold a centerpiece of awareness in our own consciousness and our day-to-day lives, because it is actually of primary importance when we truly understand it, not just philosophically, but also practically in the way that we live and in the way that we direct our attentions and our concentrations in everything that we do. And for those of you who don't know, I teach at our Living Wisdom High School. And in that high school, it's my great joy not just to teach the fundamentals of reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's, but also hopefully to be able to impart an inspired and a Godward-directed vision of life. And so one of the things that I like to ask some of the students occasionally is I'll just ask them in history classes, I'll say, hey, if you could have lunch with any person from world history, who would it be? And I find it really interesting because, the young boy who's first learning about war history might say Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. Fine. But then after some time, when they get a little bit more mature, I begin to introduce this concept that maybe if you're thinking clearly, there's really only a few answers. And I think you could narrow it down pretty succinctly to Jesus Christ, Krishna, the Buddha, and other great masters. Because if you could meet them and ascertain the veracity of their statements and of the power of their incarnation, well, nothing else could even come close to that importance. And that's an interesting thing to explore with a high school student, but dare I say it's an interesting thing for each one of us to explore as an individual and as a devotee. Because if the avatar is what the scriptures say it is, if Christ is who he says he was, if Yogananda is in fact an incarnation of God, then is there any more important goal of our lives than growing in our attunement and our receptivity to that supreme divine messenger that has been sent to this world, sent into our lives? But what's interesting is that if we do take that for granted, we might yet still make some fundamental mistakes. And we might think to ourselves that the only way to grow in attunement or closeness to an avatar is by proximity. But as the reading itself shows, that merely being in the presence of a master does not assure attunement to his ultimate reality, to the infinite potential of his consciousness, as we heard that one devotee, Debbie, arguing with the master about the state of what it means to be a master, which I must say I relate to as being a high school teacher. But it was a joke. Okay. But what's interesting, just to highlight this with another story, I'm told, I never met the man, that there was a devotee who came to Ananda and was very drawn by Yogananda through the autobiography of a yogi. But when he arrived and discovered that Yogananda was in fact no longer in the body, he became very disconcerted by that, and actually determined to go to India because he decided that he needed to be in the company of a true living avatar. And so he went to India and he sought out satsang and company and the blessings and darshan of many true great living saints that India has. And apparently in the company of one such saint, the saint asked him, "Why are you here?" And he said, "Well, sir, I'm hoping that you'll accept me as my guru." And the saint said, "I'm not your guru, Yogananda's your guru." And the man said, "But how can that be? Yogananda is dead." And the saint said, "Yogananda's not dead, you're dead. Yogananda's very much alive. You just haven't recognized him." And so what I mean to illustrate by that story is that, okay, we take for granted maybe, perhaps, that the avatar is an incarnation of divinity, but yet how do we relate to that? How can we actually attune to that reality? How can we disciple ourselves to their teachings, and more importantly, of course, to their magnetism, to their power? And, of course, we have meditation, we have prayer, we have devotion, but many of us spend the majority of our days engaged in daily activities, don't we? We don't spend 10 hours meditating, or as the sleepless saint in Autobiography of a Yogi, 20 hours meditating and then recognizing that even that is insufficient.